What do you mean you canceled the reservation? I gripped my phone tighter, stepping away from my desk at work to find a quiet corner in the hallway. The engagement party is this Saturday. We sent out invitations weeks ago. The venue was simply too expensive, Jenna, my mother replied, her voice carrying that practiced calm she used when delivering disappointing news. Your father and I discussed it, and we just can't justify spending that much on a party. We'll find something more appropriate. Appropriate? I could feel my face flushing with anger. The Riverside Terrace was my dream venue. I've talked about having important celebrations there since I was 16. Dreams need to align with reality, dear. Now, I've been looking at some charming restaurant back rooms that would be perfectly suitable. We already put down a deposit, I interrupted. How much could you possibly be saving by canceling now? A telling pause. It's not just about the money, Jenna. It's about setting reasonable expectations for your future. With David's background, perhaps it's better to start with something more modest. The implication was clear, and it made my stomach knot. I ended the call shortly after, promising to talk about it later, while knowing the decision had already been made. My name is Jenna Whitfield, 29 years old, and despite growing up with wealthy parents in Cincinnati's exclusive Amberley Village neighborhood, I've spent my adult life proving I could make it on my own. I built a successful career in architectural design without my father's connections. I bought my own condo without touching my trust fund. And I fell in love with David Chen, a brilliant software developer who grew up with nothing but made something extraordinary of himself, even if my parents couldn't see beyond his modest clothes and unassuming demeanor. All I wanted was one day, one perfect celebration, where my worlds could come together, where David and I could announce our engagement surrounded by the people we loved, in a place that felt special. Now my parents had taken even that away, with barely a week's notice. As I walked back to my desk, my phone buzzed with a text from my sister Vanessa. Mom just told me about Riverside. So sorry, but silver lining. She's upgrading my birthday venue to make up for the family embarrassment. Isn't that great? I stared at the message, reading it 3 times before the meaning sank in. They hadn't canceled because of the cost. They'd canceled because they were embarrassed. Of David. Of our engagement. Of me. And somehow, that wasn't even the worst part. My sister's birthday was the weekend after our canceled engagement party. Growing up in the Whitfield family meant understanding that appearances mattered above all else. My father built Cincinnati's largest commercial real estate firm through connections forged on golf courses and at charity galas. My mother served on the boards of the city's most prestigious cultural institutions, ensuring our family name appeared in all the right society columns. Vanessa thrived in this environment. 2 years younger than me, she embraced the family legacy, dating only men from appropriate backgrounds and pursuing a law degree not out of passion, but because it was expected. She became the daughter my parents had always wanted, polished, predictable, and perfectly aligned with their values. I took a different path. In college, I volunteered designing community centers in underserved neighborhoods instead of joining my mother's sorority. After graduation, I declined my father's offer of a corner office at Whitfield Properties and joined a small, innovative architectural firm specializing in sustainable design. Each choice widened the gap between us, but I believed my parents respected me for forging my own way, even if they didn't understand it. Then I met David at a tech conference where I was presenting on smart building design. Unassuming in his plain button-down shirt and worn jeans, he asked the most insightful questions about integrating technology into architectural spaces. We talked for hours afterward at a nearby coffee shop. He was brilliant, kind, and refreshingly genuine, qualities I'd found in short supply within my parents' social circle. After 6 months of dating, I brought David home for dinner. The evening was tense, with my parents asking pointed questions about his education, a state school on scholarship, and his family, middle class, his father a high school teacher, his mother a nurse. My father barely concealed his disapproval when David mentioned he still drove his college car, a 15-year-old Honda that ran perfectly well. Well, at least he's resourceful, my mother had whispered to me later that night, as if frugality were an exotic trait she was trying to be open-minded about. I'd chosen to believe they just needed time to see the man I saw, to appreciate his brilliant mind and generous heart, rather than fixating on his bank account or pedigree. When David proposed 6 months later with a simple but meaningful ring he'd designed himself, my parents offered lukewarm congratulations and immediately suggested a long engagement. "Just to be sure," my father had said, "marriage is a lifetime commitment. You want to know someone completely before taking that step." What he really meant was, he hoped I'd come to my senses and find someone more suitable. In retrospect, I should have seen the warning signs. The engagement party they'd reluctantly agreed to host was never meant to actually happen. The final confirmation came 3 days after the cancellation, when I stopped by my parents' house unannounced. I'd been avoiding their calls, needing time to process my anger before confronting them. As I pulled into the curved driveway, I noticed extra cars parked outside: my aunt's Mercedes, my father's business partner's Range Rover, and my sister's BMW. I found them in the sunroom, gathered around catering samples and floral arrangements. My mother was gesturing animatedly to what appeared to be a table layout. "The riverside terrace has such lovely natural light," she was saying, "and with the head table positioned here, overlooking the river—" "What is this?" My voice cut through the cheerful chatter. 5 heads turned toward me in surprise. My mother recovered first. "Jenna, we didn't know you were coming by. We're just finalizing some details for Vanessa's birthday celebration." At the riverside terrace. It wasn't a question. An uncomfortable silence fell. My aunt suddenly became very interested in her phone. My father's business partner murmured something about a call he needed to make and slipped out. Vanessa at least had the decency to look embarrassed. "I told Mom it was too soon after your situation, but she insisted the venue was perfect and already available." "Available because you canceled my reservation," I said, my voice eerily calm, despite the storm raging inside me. My father stood straightening his golf shirt. "Jenna, let's discuss this privately." "Why? Everyone here already knows what happened. You canceled my engagement party, claiming it was too expensive, and then booked the exact same venue for Vanessa's birthday. I'd love to hear the explanation." "It's not that simple, dear," my mother began, her society smile firmly in place. "With the guest list we've cultivated for Vanessa's event, the riverside makes perfect sense. The connections your father can foster there." "And my guests weren't important enough? My celebration wasn't worth it?" "That's not what your mother is saying," my father interjected. "Look, Jenna, we've been patient with this phase of yours, the job at that small firm, the modest apartment, and now David." "David?" My voice hardened. "What does my fiancé have to do with this?" My parents exchanged a look I'd seen too many times before, the one that preceded some difficult truth they felt obligated to share for my own good. "He's just not suitable," my mother finally said. "Not for someone with your background. He's nice enough, but he has no ambition, no family connections, nothing to offer." "Except love, respect, and support," I countered. "Things that actually matter." My father sighed heavily. "Your fiancé isn't good enough for this family, Jenna. And deep down you know it. We're simply trying to save you from making a mistake you'll regret." The words landed like physical blows. I'd suspected their disapproval, but hearing it stated so bluntly shocked me to my core. In that moment, surrounded by party preparations meant for my sister but not for me, I finally saw my parents clearly, their conditional love, their shallow values, their absolute certainty that they knew best. I walked out without another word, my mind reeling. They had judged and dismissed the man I loved without ever truly knowing him. And for the first time, I wondered if they knew me either. That evening, I sat in my condo with David, tears streaming down my face as I recounted what had happened. He listened quietly, his expression more sad than angry. When I finished, he took my hands in his. "I'm sorry they hurt you," he said softly. "But I'm not surprised by how they feel about me." I thought they'd at least try to get to know you, I said, wiping my eyes. I thought family mattered more than money. David gave me a sad smile. Some people can only see value in things they already understand. Your parents measure worth in a specific way, and I don't fit their metrics. His calm acceptance only made me more determined. Let's host our own engagement party, I suggested suddenly. Something simple but meaningful. We don't need the Riverside Terrace. We don't need their approval. David hesitated. Are you sure? This is your family, Jenna. I don't want to be the reason you cut ties with them. You're not the reason, I assured him. Their behavior is. Please, let's do this our way. Over the next 2 days, I channeled my hurt into action. I found a charming rooftop venue at a local brewery, reached out to friends, and designed digital invitations. It was coming together beautifully, a celebration that reflected who we really were, not who my parents thought we should be. Then came Friday morning, and a call from Vanessa. Mom's invited the Hendersons to my party, she said without preamble. The Hendersons? As in Jonathan Henderson's family? My stomach sank. Jonathan was Vanessa's ex-boyfriend, the son of a prominent banking family whom my parents had adored. They'd been devastated when Vanessa broke up with him last year to date Brad, a pharmaceutical sales rep they considered beneath her. Now the invitation made perfect sense. They were trying to orchestrate a reunion. She claims it's because his father is considering investing in Dad's new development, Vanessa continued, but we both know what she's doing. And get this, she told Brad the party was canceled due to family issues, but really she just didn't send him an invitation. I closed my eyes, recognizing the pattern. She's doing to you what they did to me. Not exactly, Vanessa countered. I'm their golden child, remember? They're not canceling my party. They're just trying to control who I celebrate it with. But Jenna, I'm really sorry about what they said to you. About David. It was cruel and unfair. It was the closest Vanessa had ever come to openly criticizing our parents. For a moment, I thought I'd found an ally. Why don't you and David join us at your own engagement party? Bring Brad, too, and we'll have our celebration right under their noses, I suggested, warming to the idea of this small rebellion. The line went quiet. I can't do that, she finally said. Dad's announcing my promotion to junior partner at the firm during the party. I've worked 3 years for this, Jenna. I can't jeopardize it, even for you. The familiar disappointment settled in my chest. So you'll let them manipulate your life as long as there's something in it for you? What about Brad? I'll make it up to him. Look, not all of us can afford to burn bridges with the family, Jenna. Some of us have practical considerations. After we hung up, I sat at my desk, staring at the half-finished invitations on my computer screen. Even my small act of independence felt hollow now. I could host my own party, but the people who should care most, my family, would still be across town, celebrating without me, continuing as if my feelings and choices didn't matter. David found me like that an hour later, my engagement ring glinting in the light as I twisted it around my finger, wondering if I was fighting a battle I couldn't win. Saturday morning, the day of what should have been our engagement party, I woke to find David already dressed and sipping coffee on our small balcony. I was thinking, he said when I joined him, maybe we should go to Vanessa's party. I nearly choked on my first sip of coffee. What? Why would we subject ourselves to that? Because running away and hosting our own party feels like admitting they've won, he said thoughtfully. But showing up, being ourselves, not letting them dictate our actions, that's standing our ground. They'll be horrible to you, I warned. They'll make snide comments and treat you like you're invisible. David shrugged. They already think I'm not good enough. What's the worst that could happen? By the time we arrived at the Riverside Terrace that evening, I'd worked myself into such a state of anxiety that my hands were shaking. The venue was stunning. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Ohio River, crystal chandeliers casting a warm glow over elegant table settings, flower arrangements that probably cost more than my monthly rent. My mother spotted us first, her practiced smile faltering for just a moment before she composed herself and glided over. "Jenna, what a surprise, and David." She lowered her voice. "Darling, this is a private family event. We didn't send you an invitation." "I know," I said, matching her quiet tone but injecting steel into my voice. "You made it very clear where I stand. But Vanessa's still my sister, and I'm here to support her." My mother's smile tightened. "Of course. How mature of you. Just please, try not to make this evening about your situation. Tonight is about celebrating Vanessa." As she moved away to greet other guests, David squeezed my hand. "You okay?" "I will be," I promised, though my confidence was wavering. The evening progressed painfully. My father barely acknowledged us, focusing instead on the Henderson family, particularly Jonathan, whom he'd seated next to Vanessa despite her obvious discomfort. David was excluded from conversations, served last at dinner, and repeatedly mistaken for waitstaff by my parents' friends. The final blow came during my father's toast. Standing at the head table, champagne flute raised, he beamed at Vanessa. "We're celebrating not just a birthday tonight, but a remarkable young woman who exemplifies the Whitfield values," he announced. "Vanessa has shown dedication to family tradition, professional excellence, and making the right connections for a successful future." His gaze drifted meaningfully from Vanessa to Jonathan Henderson before continuing. "In fact, I'm proud to announce that Vanessa is being promoted to junior partner at Whitfield Properties, where she will help lead our exciting new venture with Henderson Financial Group." Applause erupted while I sat frozen in shock. This wasn't just a birthday party, or even just a professional announcement. It was an orchestrated business merger between families, one that would bind Vanessa to Jonathan through their parents' companies, making any possibility of her choosing her own path increasingly difficult. And suddenly, with crystal clarity, I understood what was happening. This wasn't about David not being good enough. It was about control, about maintaining the Whitfield dynasty on their terms. As realization dawned, I felt David tense beside me. Following his gaze, I saw my father deep in conversation with a man I didn't recognize. The stranger kept glancing in our direction, his expression shifting from disbelief to something like awe. "David," I whispered. "Who is that man?" "Robert Maxwell," he replied tightly, "CEO of Pinnacle Tech." Before I could ask why the CEO of one of the country's largest technology companies would be interested in us, David was already standing. "We need to leave. Now." As we slipped out, I caught one last glimpse of Robert Maxwell pulling my father aside, gesturing in our direction with unmistakable urgency. Something had just changed, though I didn't yet understand what. "Are you going to tell me what that was about?" I asked as we drove home, the tension in David's jaw visible in the glow of the dashboard lights. He sighed, shoulders relaxing slightly. "Remember that project I've been working on for the past 3 years? The one I couldn't talk much about? The algorithm for predictive analysis in healthcare? The one that's coming along whenever I ask about it?" I'd always respected his privacy around his work, assuming it was typical startup confidentiality. David glanced at me, a rueful smile playing at his lips. "It's done, Jenna. The development, the testing, everything. I've been in acquisition talks for the past month." I blinked, processing this news. "That's amazing. But what does that have to do with what happened tonight?" "Robert Maxwell's company is buying my software. The deal closes Monday morning." The implications started to sink in. "Is it a big deal?" David's laugh held no humor. "Pinnacle Tech doesn't make small acquisitions." Before I could press further, my phone exploded with notifications. 3 missed calls from my father, 2 from my mother, and a text from Vanessa. "What the hell did your fiancé do? Dad and Maxwell are losing their minds." I showed David the text. "Care to fill me in on the rest?" When we reached home, David pulled out his laptop and showed me the press release scheduled for Monday morning. My eyes widened as I read. Pinnacle Tech acquires BioPredict for $175 million. $175 million? I gasped, looking up from the screen. David, this is life-changing, he acknowledged. That's why I've been so distracted lately. The negotiations, the legal reviews, the planning. He took my hands. I wanted to tell you, but the confidentiality agreements were ironclad until the deal closed. My mind raced, connecting the dots. So Robert Maxwell recognized you tonight? That's why he was talking to my father? Apparently. David ran a hand through his hair. I guess he thought your father already knew who I was. Just then my phone rang again. My father. I hesitated, then answered on speaker. Jenna, he began, his voice unusually deferential. Is David with you? I'd very much like to speak with him about a potential opportunity. It's nearly midnight, Dad, I replied, my voice cool. What opportunity could possibly be so urgent? A pause. Robert Maxwell mentioned that David's company has developed some extraordinary healthcare technology. Whitfield Properties is expanding into the medical office sector, and we'd be very interested in discussing potential collaborations. The audacity was breathtaking. Hours ago, my father couldn't be bothered to acknowledge David's existence. Now, sensing a business opportunity, he was falling over himself to connect. Actually, I said, a plan forming in my mind, we'd love to discuss this further. How about brunch tomorrow? Say, 11 a.m. at the Riverside Terrace. My father readily agreed, promising to make the arrangements immediately. After hanging up, David looked at me questioningly. The Riverside Terrace? Are you sure? Absolutely, I said, my determination growing stronger. If they want to talk business with you, they can do it where our engagement party should have been, and they can face exactly who you are, not who they assumed you were. David smiled, but his expression remained concerned. Jenna, I never wanted my work or money to matter in our relationship. That's why I drive an old car and wear simple clothes. I wanted to be valued for my ideas, not my bank account. And I do value you for that, I assured him. But tomorrow isn't about the money. It's about showing my parents the consequences of judging people based on appearances, and about reclaiming our dignity on our own terms. As we prepared for bed, my phone buzzed with a text from my father. Brunch confirmed. Riverside Terrace, private room. Looking forward to discussing this exciting opportunity with David. The stage was set for our own version of justice. The Riverside Terrace looked different in daylight, less imposing, more transparent. Sunlight streamed through the windows, casting long rectangles of light across the polished floors. No hiding in shadows today. My parents arrived first, dressed in their Sunday best, faces carefully arranged in welcoming expressions. Vanessa came too, curiosity apparently overriding her embarrassment. She'd brought Brad along, a small act of defiance I quietly appreciated. David and I entered last. He wore the same simple button-down shirt and jeans he'd worn when we first met, a deliberate choice we'd discussed that morning. I dressed professionally but modestly. Architect Jenna, not Whitfield heiress Jenna. David, wonderful to see you again, my father boomed, extending his hand with newfound enthusiasm. Robert Maxwell speaks very highly of your work. Very highly indeed. Thank you for arranging this, David replied politely, his demeanor unchanged from every other interaction with my parents, respectful but unimpressed by their status. We settled at the table, mimosas and coffee appeared, and my father launched into an obviously rehearsed speech about exciting synergies and mutual opportunities. My mother nodded along, occasionally touching David's arm to emphasize a point, the same David she couldn't be bothered to speak to directly a week earlier. When my father finally paused for breath, I placed a folder on the table, a copy of the acquisition documents David had shown me, with his permission. Before we go further, I said calmly, I think we should be clear about what we're discussing. I opened the folder, turning it to face my parents. David isn't just developing healthcare technology. He founded BioPredict, which Pinnacle Tech is acquiring tomorrow for $175 million. My father's face went pale as he scanned the document. My mother's smile froze, her eyes darting between David and the paper. I believe, I continued, that Whitfield Properties actually approached Pinnacle last year about partnering on their medical campus, and were declined. Isn't that right, Dad? The silence that followed was deafening. My father cleared his throat, composure slipping for perhaps the first time in his professional life. I wasn't aware of the scale of David's involvement, he admitted. This is certainly impressive. My mother recovered more quickly. David, you should have told us. All this time we thought... She trailed off, realizing there was no acceptable way to finish that sentence. Thought what? I prompted. That he wasn't good enough because he drives an old Honda? Because he doesn't flash his wealth or connections? Vanessa was staring at David with new eyes. Wait, BioPredict? Brad applied for a position there last year. They're incredibly selective. Brad nodded, looking sheepish. I didn't get past the second interview. Too many qualified candidates. David hires people based on their skills and character, I explained. Not their pedigree or connections. Novel concept, isn't it? The implications were sinking in. The man they'd dismissed, the engagement they'd tried to undermine, the celebrations they'd canceled, all based on assumptions about worth that were both wrong and shallow. We obviously misjudged the situation, my father said stiffly. Perhaps we could start fresh. Host a proper engagement party for you both. At the riverside, of course, no expense spared. I looked at David, who gave me a small nod of support. That won't be necessary, I said. We're having our celebration next Saturday at the Mill Creek Brewery rooftop. Simple, meaningful, with people who've supported us all along. Rising from my seat, I continued. I didn't come here for apologies or to change your minds about what matters. I came so you would understand what you lost with your judgment. Not just a successful son-in-law, but a daughter who needed you to see beyond your own narrow definition of value. Taking David's hand, I walked out of the riverside terrace for the second and final time, leaving my parents to contemplate the true cost of their superficial standards.